that a democratic political culture is essential for any kind of governance, for any kind of social contract, for any kind of society to be together, live together and work together. But the thing is, when you say, do you agree that democracy is the best form, you have one concept of it in your mind, which is not going to be easy for you to articulate. I might have another concept of it in my mind. What is democracy? Now, when we're talking about Western democracy, let it also be clear that there are there's more than one Western concept of democracy. Okay, you can look at, one can look at Thomas Paine. He had very radical ideas on democracy, but the main people who led the US independence and benefited from it, unlike Thomas Paine, were people like Jefferson, Washington, all of whom were slave owners. We speak of the ideals of Jeffersonian democracy. Thomas Jefferson not only wrote beautiful and exquisite prose, he was also pretty harsh on his slaves, and he was willing to sell the months-old children of slaves. He did not release his slaves in his will, as Washington did for some of them. And Mr. Jefferson also had profoundly racist prejudices. Democracies that you have in the West, in the United Kingdom, in the US, are based on the enslavements of people, whether in Africa or in Iraq or in all around the world. In that sense, there is continuity and consistency in the approach. All the founding fathers of the United States, from the 18th century onwards, you have people, from 17th, 18th century onwards, you have people quoting, harking back to Rome, harking back to Greece, writing epics on these nations and the early republics and the democracies. These were democracies based on slave ownership. When European nations went out and enslaved the world, it was very good to remember Rome and Greece. And it was very good in Greece to remember Plato and Aristotle, because these were guys who justified slavery. They saw the slave as a property. Adam Smith writes of the slave as if he's a piece of machinery. Whether it's in ancient Greece or in more modern England, Adam Smith writes of the slave as a piece of machinery whose parts wear out and you have to reinvest. Okay? There's a lot of consistency in this view of human beings. Right down I'm saying, when you are an imperialist power in the 18th, 19th centuries, conquering people all around the world, it's pretty good to restore those elements of the Hellenic, Greek, Roman, other cultures which support your present day position, because those were slave owning republics and slave owning democracies and slave owning empires, and most of those who founded the United States drew their inspiration from that kind of democracy. It's on view in Iraq, where every one of you has sent a token number of troops as well. Okay, we're seeing that kind of democracy, a democracy again based on enslavement of peoples. You were asking me the question, why did Gandhi call Western democracy a diluted form of fascism? Do you know something about Gandhi? All but 5 months of his life, he lived under British imperialism. He watched a nation that called itself the mother of all parliaments, right? And he watched them enslave 100 nations, all of them completely oppressed and held under British yoke, while the imperialist power practiced democracy at home. To some extent. Even that democracy at home was substantially improved by the radical work and writings and ideas of people like Thomas Paine and others. Please notice that Gandhi did not say democracy is diluted fascism. He said Western democracy is diluted fascism. Let me give you an idea. I find it appalling, this Greco-Roman stuff, which I have it coming out of my ears, and then we have a French academic passing through Bombay who sings the praise of Greco-Roman republics and democracies, and I think, here is a guy coming from France, a nation that has produced far more noble ideas of democracy and egalitarianism than Greece and Rome ever did. Yeah? Here is a nation that gave the world the slogan, liberty, equality, fraternity, a slogan that Indian freedom fighters took to their graves with them. Switzerland, oh great, Switzerland, taught to me in school as the epitome of democracy at every level. When did they give women the right to vote? Some 30 years after India did, because women in India started had the right to vote the minute this country was born. I still say it does not make India a democracy in my sense. It makes India a good electoral democracy. Unlike most of America, people in this country vote, they use their vote and they use it to change governments and to produce change. The man who was the main architect of the Constitution of India, Baba Saheb Ambedkar, as early as when the Constitution was released, when the Constitution was launched in 1950, Ambedkar said, we have built a thriving political democracy, but we have not accompanied it with economic democracy. The tensions of inequality, the tensions of this contradiction will blow us up one day. Now, if you want to believe that United States and the UK and its allies in Europe went into Iraq to promote democracy, if you believe that, then you can believe in the tooth fairy, Santa Claus and the rest of that crap. Now, if Iraq's national product had been onions, there would have been no war. Okay? There are two kinds of things why people went into Iraq. One, of course, is the natural resources and the other geopolitical stuff. Noam Chomsky put it very well when he said international relations are also organized pretty much on the lines of the mafia. If the small shopkeeper refuses to pay, you don't really need his money, but you've got to beat the shit out of him, because otherwise other shopkeepers will get ideas. I think that a lot of people make the distinction between democratic behavior and democratic governance and the imposition of a particular breed of violent democracy on these nations by the United States and its Western allies. Okay, I think people are intelligent enough to make this difference. Many Western minds are not intelligent enough, it seems, to understand that people make the distinction. They might want democracy, they may not want your democracy. The Australian political scientist Alex Carey, I think, has summarized, when talking about the 20th century, he summarized the entire century in three brilliant lines. He said there were three great developments in the 20th century. The rise and growth of democracy. The rise and growth of corporate power. The rise and growth of corporate media to try and strangle the rise and growth of democracy.